Good evening. Today's module is module 9, and topic is managing global diverse workforce and multiculturalism. And I'm Dr. Madhumita Banerjee. Let's look at the learning objectives. To understand cultural diversity and its impact on the workplace, to develop cross cultural competency and communication skills, to implement inclusive management practices, to address global workforce challenges and opportunities. So, we're going to look into cultural diversity and its impact on the workplace in the company, then cross-cultural competency and communication skills that are involved, then implement inclusive management trends, then addressing the global workforce challenges and opportunities that may present. All right, let's look at the introduction. In today's interconnected world, businesses operate on a global scale, drawing upon talent from diverse cultural backgrounds and geographic locations. It's very simple. You have companies which are MNCs and they employ people from all over the world because they do have branches all over the world. This trend towards globalization has led to increasingly multicultural workforces, presenting both opportunities and challenges for organizations. Effectively managing a global diverse workforce and embracing multiculturalism has become essential for businesses seeking to thrive in the modern economy. So, on one hand, you have a company which has branches all over the world. So, the company needs to get in people locally over there. All right. So, you have people walking in from all cultural backgrounds. There are geographic differences. All right. And you have so many challenges. All right. You're working with diverse workforce here. So you're working with real challenges, all right? And yes, there are lots and lots of opportunities of learning and developing. One learns from each other a lot. All right, if you're talking about best practices, this is the best way to pick it up. Effectively managing global diverse workforce and embracing multiculturalism has become essential for businesses. All right, so you have whole lot of global diverse workforce, and yes, there are lots of challenges that needs to be worked out. The term global diverse workforce refers to teams comprised of individuals from different countries, ethnicities, races, genders, ages, religions, and socioeconomic backgrounds. Global diverse workforce is nothing but you have people coming from all kind of ethnicity, religion, caste, creed, age group, gender, everything. All right. So they have constantly they have to update constantly. They have to find out the requirements of the people. All right. So whom with whom you're working and who is in your employment. So you're doing their background research, you're selecting them, recruiting them, you're training them. And yes, you're updating with the training, planning, scheduling, everything. So imagine the kind of challenge a company can face. All right. This diversity brings a wealth of perspectives, experiences, and talents to the table, driving innovation, creativity, and competitiveness. So you can imagine the kind of people you're getting to work with. You know, it's huge. It's huge. Learning is huge. So you, people have so much of creativity. All right, the company can use those talents. They can use the perspectives and people's experiences to develop and create new training formulas or come up with solutions to problems, etc. However, managing such diversity requires a nuanced approach that acknowledges and celebrates differences while fostering a sense of belonging and inclusivity. Now, when you're working with different cultures, all right, you get to understand that each culture is different from the other. Each one has a particular way of behaving. Now, when we are talking about nuanced approach, what it really means is you look at it, you observe, you understand, and then take steps to work it out. All right. So you acknowledge that there are differences. Say, I'm working with Japanese or I'm working with the Americans. You know, there's a remarkable difference in their approach to work. Then you have Chinese, Indians, they have completely remarkable. differences in their angle of thoughts. All right. So you have so many things in play here. All right. But at the same time, the company has to ensure that there is unity in the diverse workforce. Multiculturalism, on the other hand, encompasses the recognition and acceptance of multiple cultural identities within a society or organization. Now, multiculturalism is nothing but yes, you're working with different cultures. Okay, they have to recognize the IHR has to recognize the differences and make sure that they can work in unity. It involves promoting respect, understanding, appreciation for different cultural norms, values, traditions. Now, here is one thing that we need to understand, that every culture has different ideas, different approach, different ways of doing their own thing. No culture is bad, but people have this tendency of thinking that my culture is better than hers or his. All right. Or my culture is better than the other. That is a very, ethnocentric way of thinking. All right. So that shouldn't be there. You have to promote and you have to acknowledge that there are differences. All right. And yes, each culture has its own beauty. Embracing multiculturalism allows organizations to leverage the strengths of a diverse workforce while building a culture of inclusivity and mutual respect. So now what is embracing multiculturalism is basically it means that you're willing to work with all types of people, all types of all from all walks of life. All right, giving them equal respect, giving them, enough training, enough programs should be laid out for them to work with each other. This explores the key principles and strategies for effectively managing a global diverse workforce and embracing multiculturalism in the workplace. Key principles and strategies will have to be formulated to accommodate these different cultures, different people from different walks of life, keeping in view the benefit of the company always. From fostering cultural competency and inclusive leadership to promoting cross cultural communication, conflict resolution, organizations must adopt a holistic approach to maximize the benefits of diversity while mitigating its challenges. So you have, what are the things that the company has to look into? Fostering cultural competency, inclusive leadership needs to be worked out. All right, then you have cross-cultural communication. People should be able to communicate with each other. All right, conflict resolution. Yes, lot of arrogance, lot of different thought processes, indifference. All right, lot of animosity, etc., etc. Anger issues that needs to be dealt out. All right, and solutions have to be put in place so that it doesn't play at favoritism and it should be equitable for all. Organizations must adopt a holistic approach to maximize the benefits of diversity while mitigating its challenges. Now you have organizations. Now look at the challenges that the organization is facing. The organization has to ensure that it benefits. It has to benefit despite all the challenges that it's going to come across. And they have to ensure that what plus points they can take out of these challenges. By doing so, businesses can create vibrant, dynamic work environments where every individual feels valued, respected, and empowered to contribute their unique talents towards common goals. So if I'm not playing at favorites or I'm not giving special benefits to one particular culture and while neglecting the other, I think the company is being very fair. All right. When I know I'm being valued, when I know I'm being respected as an employee, then I'm very happy person. All right. I'll give in my best shot or full, fully motivated effort. Let's look at the definition now. Managing a global diverse workforce and multiculturalism involves effectively leading and coordinating teams comprised of individuals from various cultural backgrounds, ethnicities, nationalities, and experiences. This management approach recognizes and leverages the diversity within the workforce to foster creativity, innovation, and inclusivity. Now, I've already explained the term inclusivity. It basically means ensuring that every culture, people from all cultures are made to feel comfortable and valued, right? Nobody's left out. Okay. So you have, according to the definition, you are basically managing global diverse workforce and facing multiculturalism, all right, coming up with whole lot of programs, etc., to coordinate through the challenges. Key components of managing a global diverse workforce and multiculturalism include cultural competency, developing an understanding of different cultural norms, values, and communication styles to facilitate effective collaboration and minimize misunderstanding. Now, this is very important, very, very important. Firstly, you will have language issues, right? People don't understand language issues, language, okay? So one person might be speaking in Marathi, the other person might be speaking in Japanese. So imagine kind of problem both of them are going to face, all right? So you need to sensitize the entire workforce by taking them through trainings, giving them language skills, telling them to do this course, that training, familiarizing themselves with project requirements, etc. All right. Basically, keeping them very, very effective. All right. Understanding cultural norms, values, communication styles is very, very important. Very important. All right. Like Americans are very, very open minded and they are very friendly. English are little reserved, okay, not too willing to share information immediately. Japanese are very, very reserved. Chinese are little less reserved, all right. Knowing their communication styles, knowing their taste, their requirements, what is it that they value most, all right. So these things in American, where you're talking about Americans, gifting something is not good, not considered good. It is considered a bribe. But in Japanese, it's a norm. All right, you have to take a gift. All right, so it's a norm. All right, so people have different ideas, different sense and behavior, attitudes, etc. They've been brought up differently, so their thought processes are different. See, cultural difference is something that one needs to recognize, at least have a know how. Then certain words will not be used. All right. Like madam, the word madam is not considered very good by many countries. You're supposed to call them by their first name. Whereas using the word madam in India, it's a mark of respect. All right. So there's so many things. There are n number of things that one needs to familiarize oneself with. The rule here, I would say, is be very careful how you communicate, all right, with a foreigner. Developing an understanding of different cultural norms, values, communication styles to facilitate effective collaboration and minimize misunderstandings. All right, keep it simple and honest. Inclusive leadership, creating an environment where all employees feel valued, respected, empowered to contribute their unique perspectives and talents. All right, so we are doing key components of managing global diverse workforce and multiculturalism. Third is cross-cultural communication, implementing strategies to bridge communication gaps and promote clear and effective communication among team members from diverse backgrounds. Now, first of all, I told you language issues. So many a times the company needs to have one language across as an official language. So that is the language that everybody will follow, everyone. And if they don't know, then they might be required to take a language course or something so that they fit into the project, right? So there are a whole lot of things. This is just 0.01% example I gave you, all right? Apart from communication gaps, we have a lot of non-verbal aspects of it. Non-verbal communication forms more than 80% of our communication, total communication. Words are barely 10% or 20%. All right. So you have words and tone form 20%, non-verbal is 80%. This is something that needs to be understood so that we don't have any kind of miscommunication. Conflicts are bound to rise, all right? Conflict resolution. Addressing conflicts that may arise due to cultural differences or misunderstandings promptly and fairly while promoting a culture of respect and understanding. So, conflicts, like I said earlier, has to be dealt with immediately. It has to be dealt with immediately and addressed in such a manner that everybody feels that they have been given justice. Diversity training, providing ongoing training and development opportunities to promote cultural awareness, sensitivity, and appreciation within the organization. Diversity training is nothing but, this training and development of a company is a very important um, department wherein right from induction, all right from induction, you have a whole lot of other trainings like language skills training they'll give you. Then they'll give you simple English grammar training, all right, so that everybody refreshes their grammar again, or email writing, okay, or presentation skills or teamwork skills, which brings everybody together and they know exactly what is expected from them, how to behave. All right. So indirectly, the training and development is inculcating these norms within the company of, but working with diverse workforce. Flexible policies and practices, adapting international policies, practices, and procedures to accommodate the needs and preferences of a diverse workforce while ensuring fairness and equity for all employees. All right, so you have, uh, since you're working with diverse workforce, yes, you need to adapt the organizational policies accordingly so that you can accommodate to the requirements of all types of employees. Global mindset. Encouraging a global mindset among employees and leaders, which involves understanding and appreciating global trends, markets, and opportunities, as well as navigating the complexities of working across different cultural contexts. So, encouraging global mindset is basically whatever global trends are going on, accordingly, the company is functioning. It is an international rule in the company. The company will function in such a way that everybody, all employees come to know exactly what is required from them, right? So they are very adaptable to, if you're transferring people from one point A to point B, they are all trained. They all know what is expected from them. The company has ensured that they have an international mindset. Overall, effective management of a global diverse workforce and multiculturalism requires a commitment to fostering an inclusive workplace culture that celebrates diversity and promotes collaboration, innovation, mutual respect among all employees. So we find that this whole thing, management of global diverse workforces, two points here. One is the benefit of the organization as a whole, and second is employee, no matter what background, what nationality, what gender, what age, etc., they come from, each one will be given a fair deal. Meaning, Managing a global diverse workforce and multiculturalism involves overseeing and leading teams composed of individuals from various cultural backgrounds, ethnicities, nationalities, experiences. It encompasses creating an inclusive environment where differences are valued, respected, leveraged to foster innovation, creative, and collaboration. We've already done that. Okay, let's go to role. The role of managing a global diverse workforce and multiculturalism encompasses several key aspects: promoting inclusion and equity, creating an inclusive workplace culture where all employees feel respected, valued, and empowered to contribute to the organization's success. So now we are talking about the role. What is the role that this is playing? What is the objective of it? All right. Promoting inclusion and equity is nothing but ensuring that everybody is comfortable and a fair deal is given to all. And yes, everyone feels respected. Fostering innovation and creativity, leveraging diverse perspectives, experiences, ideas to drive innovation, problem solving, and creativity within the organization. So you have people coming from diverse background. So imagine the kind of creativity they can come up with. So if you're having a team of people from different nationalities, even listening to them or just discussing with each other is a very, very interesting aspect. All right, the kind of points one can come up with, you would be surprised what angle of thoughts come out in a particular topic, and then they come up with a solution, highly creative solution. All right, all these things depends on the exposure of the employee's background. If you check out an employee, what kind of exposure he's had in his life, that is what creates him, right? Enhancing performance and productivity, harnessing the talents, skills, capabilities of a diverse workforce to enhance organizational performance and productivity. So you have, on one hand, you are helping as a company, you're helping the performance and productivity. You're uh, trying to channelize the productivity in the correct manner without any wastage of resources. All right. And on the other hand, yes, ensuring that the organization benefits in a big way. Supporting talent acquisition and retention, attracting and retaining top talent from diverse backgrounds by promoting a culture of diversity and inclusion within the organization. Now, role is why are you managing the diverse workforce? All right. It is the one role is supporting talent acquisition and retention. So you need to attract the best available in the market by giving the best offers that the company can. All right. And another big challenge is retaining them. Mitigating risks and challenges, addressing cultural conflicts, biases, and misunderstandings that may arise in multicultural work environments, thereby mitigating legal, reputational, and operational risks. So you do have risks and challenges when you are dealing with multicultural diverse workforce on a global basis. All right, you're talking about a global basis. We've seen in the earlier chapters how challenging it can be for the repatriation or expatriates, all right, or sending somebody abroad, right? So there are so many other challenges. Look at the market, look at the economy, all right. Seeing all this, you have the company has a serious task in hand. Let's look at the process of managing global diverse workforce and multiculturalism involves several interconnected stages. Assessment and analysis. Conducting a comprehensive assessment of the organization's diversity profile and analyzing the impact of cultural diversity on organizational the dynamics and performance. So assessment and analysis is not only of the talent acquisition, but you also require to understand what is really required, what kind of people or what kind of professional people are required in a certain region. Right? I might require a certain kind set of engineers to go to Japan. I need scientists to go to Norway. I need doctors go to US. All right. Okay. So you need to identify what exactly is required. Diverse. Imagine you're managing this global diverse workforce. So assessment and analysis here is very, very important, for which you really need to understand the organization's diversity profile. Strategy development. Developing a strategic plan for managing diversity and multiculturalism that aligns with organizational goals, values, and priorities. Strategy development, like I told you earlier, whatever planning or training or programming, anything they do, the entire plan has to be in tandem with the benefits of the organization. It cannot be in favor of the employees alone. All right. Unless it is benefiting the companies, it's not going to work. Leadership and accountability. Fostering leadership commitment and accountability for diversity and inclusion initiatives at all levels of the organization. So yes, you need leadership at every level of the hierarchy of a company. All right. And yes, accountability for diversity and inclusion initiatives at all levels. Education and training, providing diversity and inclusion training programs for employees to increase awareness, understanding, appreciation of cultural differences. So you do have a lot of cross-cultural communication workshops, then you have a whole lot of trainings in place, a whole lot of, they'll, if nothing else, they'll send you a PPT telling you exactly what is required, how you're supposed to address the person who's coming from abroad, right? That kind of thing. So all this is given, this awareness is given to the employees so that everything goes smoothly. Policy development and implementation, reviewing and updating organizational policies and practices to ensure they are inclusive, equitable, and culturally sensitive, right? So policy development and implementation should be simple, all right, should be reviewed regularly, updated regularly, so that it moves along with the requirement. Evaluation and continuous improvement, monitoring progress and outcomes of diversity and inclusion initiatives, and making adjustments based on feedback and evolving organizational needs. So basically, you're evaluating assessment, requirement, everything. It is a continuous process. I have recruited this person, I've made him go through the induction, I've put him on certain courses so that he is apt for the project. It doesn't end there. I'll have to keep a watch on the progress of the employee and suggest programs or suggest courses wherein he can further improve and be further used to the company. So you can have appraisal meetings, etc., wherein the boss can tell the employee that, okay, you require to do this. Okay. So evaluation and continuous improvement has to be there. Let's look at the importance now. Managing a global diverse workforce and embracing multiculturalism is crucial for organizations due to several reasons. Competitive advantage, leveraging diversity competitive advantage. Leveraging diversity can provide organizations with a competitive edge by fostering innovation, creativity, and adaptability. So now we are looking at the importance of this managing this humongous thing. All right, managing a global diverse workforce. All right. Now here, competitive edge. The company has to ensure that, I'm employing these set of employees from a diverse culture, It should not clash. It should not be a too big a challenge for me to handle. All right. It should give me some benefit. I should have some advantage. Talent acquisition and retention. Creating an inclusive workplace culture can attract and retain top talent from diverse backgrounds, enhancing organizational effectiveness and performance. Now, this is given in just 3 lines, but trust me, this talent acquisition and retention can run into hundreds of pages. It's that complicated. Okay. So here, what is the HR doing? HR is trying to create a comfortable place for the employees to work, no matter which background they come from. Employee engagement and satisfaction. Promoting a diverse and inclusive work environment can improve employee engagement, satisfaction, and well being, leading to higher levels of productivity, loyalty, and commitment. So, you have employee engagement and satisfaction. Why are we talking about employment engagement? I mean, they're already working, already getting a salary. But remember one thing, you cannot keep any employee on the bench for too long. Either you ask them to leave or you put them on a project because it is a serious loss to the company. If an employee, see, it works both ways. If the employee is sitting on the bench, all right, for too long, that is also not good for him because the moment there's a restructuring or something, probably he'll be the first one to go, all right, because he's not involved in any project or anything. Okay. And secondly, I am a company, I am paying the salary of an employee who has nothing to do. He just comes in the office, sits, and he goes. That is not a good situation for either the company or the employee. All right. So the company needs to ensure that projects are in place so that they can keep their employees totally and thoroughly engaged. Otherwise, put them on some courses, trainings, etc., so that they are absolutely well trained and ready for the next project. Okay. Well-being leading to higher levels of productivity, loyalty, and commitment. Loyalty and commitment is something that the company really needs to look into. If the company is giving me, overloading me with excess work, and I feel, as if I'm working like a dog day in and out, but I'm not getting any benefits from the company, no extra benefits, nothing, not even recognition. It's something like I'm a cog in the machine, all right? But that's not how it should be. The company comes up with awards like, this week's best worker or best employee or this month's best employee, all right? Or the person who has achieved the target in case of sales department, achieved the target and all that recognition, awards, certificates, etc., bonus, etc. All these things are in place so that the person feels very motivated. Salary is a given, but apart from that, what other awards, achievements he can get? Merits and demerits. Now let's look at the merits. Innovation, creativity, diversity fosters innovation and creativity by bringing together individuals with different perspectives and ideas. Talent acquisition, embracing diversity enhances an organization's ability to attract and retain top talent from diverse backgrounds. So basically, what it's talking about is you're embracing diversity. What does it mean? That means the organization has created various types of employments, vacancies, all right? So that you need the engineer, you need the doctor, you need the architect, you need the scientist, you need the teacher, you need everybody, all right? Everybody. So they are creating so much of vacancies, so many, diverse employments within the organization, so that you're working with diverse cultures and diverse professions. All right. So embracing diversity enhances an organization's ability to attract and retain top talent from diverse backgrounds. And again, we are talking about innovation and creativity. We have written just 2 lines here. But this is again a big challenge, innovation and creativity. Market insights. A diverse workforce provides valuable insights into diverse customer needs and preferences, helping organizations tailor products and services to global markets. Now, you know the ups and downs of the market, the economy of the market, the depressions coming in, all these things need to be kept in view and it has to be updated. It have the employment of people has to move along with the requirement of the company. The diverse workforce, you can get people from here there, you can transfer them from here there. All right. Also, you have to keep in view their needs and preferences. So basically they're tailor making jobs. Okay. Employee engagement. Inclusive workplaces promote higher levels of employee engagement, satisfaction, and retention. Employee engagement here, I'd like to say, see, you have people coming from different backgrounds, all right? So the company may organize some sports events also, all right, which acts like an icebreaker. People come to know about the other person, they talk. In a formal scenario, it is very difficult to talk, right? You stick to the point and that's it. But put the same people in an informal setting, all right, they will talk more, they will be more friendly, they'll find out more about each other just by having a conversation. All right, it would be nice, some camaraderie, some friendship, etc. That forms a better team when people know a little bit about each other. If they become friends, then they work better. And people also feel good coming to the company when they know that they have a couple of friends there. All right. It's not only just work, but work while having fun. Let's look at the demerits. Cultural conflicts. Cultural differences may lead to misunderstandings, conflicts, and communication breakdowns in multicultural work environments. Cultural conflicts can be very serious. All right. Like you're dealing with different cultures. Okay. So any kind of anger issues, arrogance, fights, these are not at all welcome. They are not at all encouraged. People have a lot of attitude that is also not encouraged. So people have disciplinary interviews in place. All right, that is the extreme kind of step. Before that, probably the person will get a counseling or somebody will talk, try to sort it out, But the extreme kind is the disciplinary interview, wherein the person is called and asked how to exactly what is the issue that he or she is behaving like this. Normally, it ends in a pink slip. Pink slip is you're asking them to resign. It's not a good situation to be in. All right. So if counseling helps and the person can calm down and work it out, that would be the best solution. So you have a whole lot of conflicts that can be resolved even by sending anonymous messages to the company or the HR department telling them that, okay, you need to do this or this is creating this problems. Right, in very big companies they do have anonymous boxes inside the company wherein you can just go put in your request, but at no given point are they supposed to use abusive language. All right, that suggestion box is there for a constructive method, but some people might use it for the wrong reasons, which is not really desirable. So you can have a lot of communication breakdowns, etc., but the company does a lot to ensure that these things do not take place. Bias and discrimination. Unconscious bias and discriminatory practices can undermine diversity and inclusion efforts, leading to inequities, disparities among employees. Now, here we are talking about demerits. All right. Now, here, if you're talking about bias and discrimination, yes, we don't want this group to come in or that caste to come in, or that religion to come in, which is not desirable. Resistance to change. Some employees may resist efforts to promote diversity and multiculturalism due to fear, discomfort, or resistance to change. Okay, so everybody's become comfortable working in a certain process. All right, a process has been followed, it becomes very structured. Suddenly, the company comes up with ideas of changing the process of working or method of working. There might be resistance. Excuse me. Complexity and challenges. Managing diversity and multiculturalism can be complex and challenging, requiring ongoing effort, resources, commitment from organizational leaders and employees. Managing diversity and multiculturalism in itself is very, very challenging. All right. This is very complex. All right. And special effort needs to be there to make it less complex. Sorry. Let's look at the summary. In conclusion, managing a diverse workforce and embracing multiculturalism is essential for organizations seeking to thrive in today's diverse and interconnected business environment. Like we said, we saw the companies having global presence, all right? They have global presence and therefore they have people from all walks of life. All right, it's very, very important to manage everything from all angles. By promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, organizations can leverage the unique perspectives, talents, and experiences of their employees, drive innovation, creative, and competitiveness. Effective management of a global diverse workforce and multiculturalism requires a strategic, holistic approach that encompasses leadership commitment, cultural competency, policy development, continuous improvement. So you have things that need to be updated regularly, looked into. Markets need to be researched properly. What is in, what is out, what is the competitive rate of a particular profession going on? All right. What has been offered by the best, companies, really good established companies, and take the best practices from there, etc. Whole lot of things are in play. By embracing diversity as a source of strength and opportunity, organizations can create inclusive, equitable, and high performing workplaces that empower employees to achieve their full potential and contribute to organizational success. So, the whole thing the whole aim is to achieve the goal of success. And it should be a win win situation for both the employer and the employee. Market responsiveness. Understanding diverse customer needs and preferences can help organizations develop products and services that resonate with global markets, driving revenue growth and market share. I'll give you a very, very small example here. Let's take the canteen facility, for example. Now, here you have people coming from all over. All right, then the company has to understand that certain cultures will not even touch beef. All right, we're talking about food. Food is a very sensitive thing. The company is running a canteen. Okay, they'll have to serve food which is not offensive to any other culture or caste or creed. Right? So it's a very small example I'm giving you. And another thing is they have to ensure, say, majority of the people of the employees in the organization are vegetarians, but you do have non-vegetarian as well. So one can create a small corner for non-vegetarians and the rest for the vegetarian. So you're not really, the company is not really being biased. It is playing fair by all the employees. So canteen facility, food and everything. That is a very sensitive issue and that also needs to be looked into. You have preferences, customer needs and preferences can help organize, develop products and services. Now, customers, when you're talking about a diverse global customer base, then one needs to keep oneself very updated what is required by the customers here. Okay, so I need to have more of cottons in, Arabian countries than synthetic ones because synthetic may not sell as much as the cottons. All right, it's as simple as that. Risk mitigation. Managing diversity and multiculturalism effectively can help organizations mitigate legal, reputational, and operational risks associated with discrimination, harassment, and cultural conflicts. So you have risk mitigation is nothing but when you're dealing with the legal bodies or the government bodies or the local ruling parties or the politicians, one needs to be very, very correct. This The local people can really make a lot of noise for the company and they can really hamper the development of the organization there itself. Let's look at the case study. Organizations with workforce diversity evidences. We're talking about organizations with workforce diversity. Now let's look at these. Following were some of the organizations where creation and management of workforce diversity were prominently observed during this study. McDonald's created McJobs, a program that has trained and hired more than 9,000 mentally and physically challenged individuals since 1981. When we spoke about diverse workforce, the companies are also catering for handicapped or physically challenged people. So you have McDonald's creating special job. 2006 and 2007, Infosys BPO received the Helen Keller Award for the best employer from the National Center for Promotion of Employment for Disabled People. Volkswagen of America has taken number of steps during becoming an age-friendly employer. That means age is no bar. The ICICI Bank, the largest private sector bank in India, has been providing equal opportunities to its female professionals, and today a large percentage of top and senior executives in the company are female, including its CEO. So, female professionals have been given a lot of leverage. Infosys has employees from over 70 countries, and women constitute more than 32% of their workforce. Special drive to ensure women also get jobs. Lucent Technologies, Marriott International, Federal Express, Xerox, and Microsystems, Colgate-Palmolive, Merck, and DuPont have at least one minority member on their board of directors. So see how these big companies are trying to help. Best practices of IBM. Diversity is a part of business strategy for IBM. It actively encourages recruitment of people from various social and cultural backgrounds, irrespective of their age, gender, race, etc. IBM also has an effective talent force to manage its workforce. IBM provides the employee opportunities to find suitable jobs across various organizational units. Or IBM actually is known for creating internal jobs. The Human Rights Commission has consistently ranked IBM 100% on its index of gay friendliness since 2003. It is the only company which has a lot of child care center relationships around the globe. IBM has well structured recruitment and training policies for disabled people too. It also has a diversity website where people with disabilities can post their resumes. So you have disabled people old age people, women, gay relationships, childcare, etc. Everything has been taken care of. Let's look at Google. Google nurtures a culture in which managers are seen as credible employees, are treated with respect, and workplace policies and practices are implemented fairly. Equity, impartiality, and justice are its three mantras. These are conveyed through practices such as balanced treatment of all the people, no favoritism regarding the rewarding policies, hiring policies, no politicking, and no discrimination based on religion, race, gender, etc. Google has created an environment which helps to attract and retain diverse kind of people and helps them to contribute to their full potential. Google funds employee network groups, which are employee initiated groups formed by persons sharing similar interests. These groups are viewed strategically to help in recruiting, nurturing, retaining diverse talents in the organization. Some of the groups include Google Women Engineers and the Gigglers, Google GLBT Group, the Black Buffer Network, Hispanic Googler Network, Native American Googlers. They help in the professional development of the employees and also act as a bridge to their communities. So Google is having a lot of internal groups which is helping people. Please do go through this link. It will give you further information. We'll just take a 5-minute break and continue with the next module, and that is module 10. All right, let's move on with the next module, module 10. Topic is industrial relations in a comparative perspective. Let's look at the learning objectives to understand different industrial relations systems, analyze the role of key stakeholders, understand global trends and challenges in industrial relations, examining industrial relations policies and practices. Introduction, let's look at this. Industrial relations, the study, practice of managing relationships between employers, employees, government are central to the functioning of modern economies. This field explores the dynamics of labor markets, employment relations, and the regulatory frameworks that govern them. So basically, we are talking about the relationship between the employer, employee, and the government, along with the dynamics of the market. A comparative perspective in industrial relations delves into examining these dynamics across different countries or regions, highlighting similarities, differences, and the impact of various factors such as culture, history, politics, and economic systems. So, when we are talking about comparative perspective in industrial relations, we are basically examining the different dynamics across countries, across regions, understanding similarities and differences, and the impact of various factors such as culture, history, politics, economic systems. By adopting a comparative lens, scholars and practitioners seek to understand how industrial relation systems evolve and adapt within diverse social, economic, and political contexts. You find that people are doing a lot of scholarly research on how companies can function, how the relations between employers and employees can be better, how they can develop and be more creative and innovate within a short period at less cost. This approach enables insights into the effectiveness of different labor market policies, employment practices, regulatory frameworks, and addressing issues such as labor rights, workplace conflicts, collective bargaining, and social justice. So, we're basically talking about labor laws, labor market policies, economic laws. All right, whole lot of things are in play when you're talking about setting up an organization or a company in a region. So the company needs to follow the laws of that region, rules, regulations, everything on that region. Also, the company has to work with the government bodies, all right, and ensure that they're following the correct labor law where with the employers of that region, all right. In this introduction, we will explore the significance of studying industrial relations from a comparative perspective, examining its implications for theory development, policy formulation, and practical management strategies. By analyzing the experiences of different countries or regions, we can gain valuable insights into the challenges, opportunities facing workers, employers, and policymakers in today's globalized world. All right, so we are talking about policy formulation. The company cannot form the policy just like that. All right, it has to do a research on what is really required in that region, how the employment is done, what is the expected wage of labor, particular labor in that region. All right, so all these things have to be taken into consideration before they can form a policy. Also, see the requirement of the labor law is the company should give conducive work environment for the laborer to work in. It cannot be hazardous. If it is dangerous, hazardous, then extra emolument has to be given. If they're working in a glass factory, they're working in a fertilizer factory, chemical fertilizer factory, or they're working in armaments, etc. So a separate law will be there. Everything needs to be followed depending on what the company is dealing in. What is their product and service? All right, what are they dealing in? Accordingly, they'll have to formulate the policy. And they'll really have to look at the practical issues also of day to day. It's not even policy is one policy which you follow throughout, based on which you make the practical rules and regulations, which will be followed on a day to day. By analyzing the experiences of different countries or regions, we can gain valuable insights into the challenges and opportunities facing workers, employers, policymakers in today's globalized world. So, why we call it a challenge for the person who is uh, formulating the policy? It is a challenge because he also should be able to afford. It should be conducive for him to go ahead with the plan. All right, he's out there in the market to make profit. And if it is more expensive and he's spending more money and he's not really getting enough to cover it, then it's not really worth it. So it can be a challenge to work out, negotiate the differences. Meaning, let's go through the meaning. Industrial relations in a comparative perspective refers to the examination, analysis of labor relations, employment practices, and regulatory frameworks across different countries or regions. This approach involves comparing and contrasting various aspects of industrial relations systems, including labor laws, collective bargaining, mechanism, trade union structures, employer-employee relationship. In some places, the trade union plays a very, very important role. All right, in certain product and service that you're going for, trade union will play a very important role, especially government. Okay. Then collective bargaining is there and different labor laws that needs to be adhered to. See, these things don't get formulated overnight. Earlier, we had child labor, all right? It was a done thing. You would see a child labor everywhere. But subsequently, it was a huge effort globally was taken up to abolish child labor, right? Which was really cruel. By adopting a comparative perspective, scholars and practitioners aim to understand the similarities, differences, factors influencing industrial relations systems in diverse social, economic, and political contexts. Now, like I told you earlier, scholars are there, people are there to sit and catalog or record how the company can do better, what are the practices they have been following, and what they have got uh, last 20 years, how the company has been doing last after that 10 years how the company wants to do, whether to follow the same rules regulations, should they restructure, should they change their policy. So everything needs to be updated to ensure that you are in the know-how and you are in the uh, race, you're still in the race. All right, it's a competitive market out there, so the company has to be in the competition all the time. So this requires updated labor laws, updated work environments, everything updated. All right. Many a times you find that the companies are restructuring itself. All right. What is the aim of restructuring? Restructuring of an organization is done as per the requirement. Now the company does not require 16 directors, they require only 9 directors. They will cut down on resource. They want to put money not in the human resource, they want to put money in another resource. All right. Maybe the method. All right. So they might want to adopt more technologies which will help the company to maybe produce faster at a shorter time and even less cost. All right. Then you have the nanotechnology which has taken place, which has helped many organizations to really cut down on their financial resources. Okay, they are benefiting. It is benefiting. So all these restructuring, everything is taking place because of the requirement of the market. Constantly, the company has to evolve with the requirement. If it means cutting down on people, they will cut down on people. All right. So labor laws, the politics, the economics, the market requirement keeps changing all the time. This comparative analysis provides insights into the effectiveness of different approaches to managing labor relations, addressing workplace conflicts, promoting social dialogue, and achieving labor market stability and equity. All right, promoting social dialogue is nothing but press releases, all right, news release, press release, etc., where the company is supposed to let the public know that, okay, it is doing this. Okay. It is for public knowledge, all right? Or managing labor relations, which may differ from country to country or region to region. So you have to be, one has to do comparative analysis all the time. Overall industrial relations in a comparative perspective contribute to theory development, policy formulation, practical management strategies by highlighting best practices, identifying challenges, and facilitating cross-national learning and challenge knowledge exchange in the field of labor and employment relations. Now let me take you back a little bit. Let's talk about the scientific industrial revolution. Right, you had the scientific industrial revolution wherein somebody took the trouble of studying exactly how the work can be broken down, how to make it more effective, how to keep the employee more safe by improving the conditions, working conditions, or if which was liked by many people. All right. Now these things are how it is studied. These things are studied by different companies in their learning and development um, department, all right, or their laboratories or their research centers. They spend crores and crores of money or huge amounts of money to do research on this, and then they come up with certain finds which can help the organization. The organization has to have visions of, 20 years, 30 years ahead, or the company has to really develop its research center in such a way that they are forerunners. Okay, so they need to identify the challenges. Like if I am in an oil business, I can identify approximately, we do have technology which identifies exactly, or sorry, approximately when this oil is going to get over. So after that, what? So I start scouting around for all other oil wells or other oil areas, where I can start afresh again or another branch of it. So this is how this is just a small example. So the companies are all the time developing, innovating, being creative, and this is a huge investment of money goes into it through research, learning for their labs and research centers. They can really come up with best practices. Also, looking at other companies which are already functioning and they are way ahead, well established companies, even startups are excellent. They come up with fantastic technologies which is worth looking into. So either it is small, medium, or large, doesn't matter. Take the best practices. So this is a learning and knowledge exchange which is continuous, so that employment relations can be defined very clearly and all challenges can be met. Definition. Let's look at the definition. Industrial relations in a comparative perspective refers to the examination, analysis of labor relations, employment practices, and regulatory frameworks across different countries or regions. This approach involves comparing and contrasting various aspects of industrial relations systems, including labor laws, collective bargaining mechanisms, trade union structures, employed-employee relationship. We've just seen this. By adopting a comparative perspective, scholars and practitioners aim to understand the similarities, differences, factors influencing industrial relations systems in diverse social, economic, political contexts. This comparative analysis provides insights into the effectiveness of different approaches to managing labor relations, addressing workplace conflicts, promoting social dialogue, achieving law or market stability and equity, labor market stability and equity. Overall, industrial relations in a comparative perspective contribute to theory development, policy formulation, practical management strategies by highlighting best practices, identifying challenges, facilitating cross national learning and knowledge exchange in the field of labor and employment relations. I'll give you another example of this. You know how there is universal law, all right? There is a universal law. So certain laws and everything they come up with, all right, after studying the way a company is functioning, the way it is changing, how the policies are being changed, how everything is being changed. Okay, so small laws which are very, very important laws. So you have universal law application. We always say, okay, it's a Murphy's law, or we are talking about it is a universal law. Universal law is application of it universally. If you have to sacrifice something in the small, uh, a small minor thing, and if it benefits whole lot of people universally, then that sacrifice is worth it. Or that's what universal law means. So you have whole lot of things, whole lot of small laws which have come up, which play a very, very important role. And yes, you do have a lot of scientists working, scholars working at it, and theories, definitions. That's how it gets formed. You have management gurus putting down, you have CEOs, CFOs, and COs who write down, jot down. That is from experience. And yes, people do look at them, people do listen and learn from them, right? Going back to the slide, role. The role of industrial relations in a comparative perspective within IHR is multifaceted and critical for MNCs. Now let's look at the factors here. Regulatory compliance. Understanding and complying with labor laws, regulations, collective agreements in different countries to ensure legal and ethical business practices. If you want to, if you are working, sorry, if you're trying to open a branch in Japan, or you're trying to open a branch in Korea, or you're trying to open a branch in Sri Lanka, the person has to study the labor laws over there. What is the labor law? What is the requirement? How the law or the government wants the company to behave on their land. All right, that is very important to understand. All right, then only they will have good business practices. Conflict resolution, managing labor disputes, grievances, conflicts effectively to maintain harmonious employer-employee relations and minimize disruptions to business operations. Self-explanatory, negotiation and bargaining, engaging in collective bargaining with labor unions and employee representatives to negotiate fair wages, working conditions, benefits across diverse geographic location. So you can negotiate, you can understand the collective bargaining of the labor unions, right? So this industrial relation, understanding the industrial relationship is very, very good. So very, very required, right? So you have fair wages, working conditions. Earlier, the people would work all the time, right? If you're looking at, way back when the scientific revolution took place, people were working all the time. They did not have any proper rules, regulations. The owner was the boss. He would give anything he wants to give. All right. But later on, they formulated such laws that till date, everything has been followed. That is fair, fair wages, absolutely fair wages, according to the market. Okay. Secondly, is safe environment for the laborer or the employee, conducive infrastructure to be given so that the employee is absolutely comfortable while working. All right. You have small working conditions that needs to be looked into. That is only fair when the employee is working for the organization. So that is how they came up with whole lot of laws, etc. Labor market analysis, analyzing labor market trends, wage rates, and employment practices in different countries to inform recruitment, staffing, talent management strategies. Right? Self-explanatory. Employee engagement, promoting employee participation, involvement, empowerment in decision making processes to enhance job satisfaction, morale, and productivity. So, the union leader can sit with the board of directors when they are formulating the policies, rules, regulations. He does get a say in the matter. Process. The process of managing industrial relations in a comparative perspective within IHR involves several interconnected stages and activities. Yes, it is a very, very competitive and very complex. Industrial relations is not a joke. Environmental scanning, conducting a comprehensive analysis of the political, economic, social, and legal environment in each country of operation to understand the context of labor relations. Like I explained to you earlier, it different countries have their own rules and regulations. Region has their own requirements. See, one is you have the rules and regulations, but also the requirements geographical area, the geographical region can be a challenge by itself. If the company wants to set up a base in the North Pole, the company will face, certain challenges which he would not face if he's setting it up in a normal region. All right, where all the facilities are or the infrastructure is present. Okay, like you have electricity, they need water facility, basic, absolutely basic. I'm not even talking about anything else, right? So taking that up in the snow and all that, the company will be paying through its nose and it will be a costly affair. So the company needs to understand whether it is worth it or not. Stakeholder engagement, building relationships with key stakeholders. Stakeholders, who are our stakeholders as a company? Government agencies, labor unions, employee representatives, industry associations, etc. All right. So these are the important stakeholders of the company, just to mention a few. All right. So one needs to have a constant dialogue, one constant communication with all of them so that there is no misunderstanding tomorrow. So if the company is coming up with some new merger, acquisition, or change of policy, change or coming up with a product launch, etc., they're supposed to inform all their key stakeholders, mandatory, compulsory. Policy development, developing global HR policies and practices that align with local labor laws, regulations, and cultural norms while promoting consistency and fairness across different countries. So you have policy development. Yes, this is very, very, very interesting. Actually, it is very interesting. Your HR policies has to be in tandem with what is required. Okay, with the labor laws, regulations, cultural norms, etc. And yes, they are different for different countries. Negotiation and bargaining. Engaging in collective bargaining with labor unions and employee representatives to negotiate labor contracts, wage agreements, and other employment terms and conditions. One can only imagine the importance of these trade unions and employee representatives. If they were not there, probably it may not be so fair. All right. Think very logically. Think very logically. These union trade unions and these representatives ensure that the company is giving a fair deal to the employee. All right. Conflict resolution, implementing mechanisms for resolving labor disputes, grievances, conflicts in a timely, fair, and constructive manner, including mediation, arbitration, and conciliation. So conflict resolution in a company, MNC company, it is already there in place. All right, already there in place. They are very well structured. Process stage one, stage two, stage three. All right, stage three is a critical stage. All right, if you've crossed all this and still conflict resolution is not happening, stage three is very critical, wherein it can result in loss of job. Continuous monitoring and evaluation, monitoring industrial relations, developments, trends, outcomes across different countries, and evaluating the effectiveness of HR policies and practices in achieving organizational objectives. So you have to keep in touch with the key stakeholders all the time. Industrial relations in a comparative perspective within IHRM are essential for MNCs due to several reasons. Legal compliance. Now, legal compliance, we all know that the legal laws have to be adhered to. All labor laws, regulations, government requirements, everything has to be uh, taken care of. Your documentation has to be proper. All the processes need to be followed to the T, right? So you have a whole lot of lawyers, etc. People who are well versed with the legal systems. They are in place in the company who will take care of it. Risk management, managing labor relations effectively to prevent disruptions, strikes, and other forms of industrial action that can impact business continuity and reputation. All right, so managing labor relations. Managing labor relations is no picnic, all right? So you really, really have to be very careful. A small bit can really light a spark, and you can have the trade union gunning for the company. So it is very, very important that these things are in place. Employee relations, building positive and constructive relationships with employees, labor unions, other stakeholders to foster trust, engagement, and loyalty. So you have the whole objective here is to make the employee comfortable and taken care of. Global talent management, developing HR strategies and practices that attract, retain, and motivate talent across diverse cultural and geographical contexts. So you have global talent management. You're having people coming in from all entire earth, all right, from all over the place they're coming, all right. So you have to develop HR strategies, HR policies to meet those particular countries or the regions, or you have to have international level laws also in place. Corporate social responsibility, demonstrating commitment to ethical labor practices, social responsibility, and sustainable development in all countries of operation. So CSR is something that was started in India. All right, India started corporate social responsibility. So now it is very well spread and it has gone global. Right? So every company has to give something back to the place where they are working from, all right? Be it environmentally, be it economically, financially, something they have to give back. It's part of their work. Now it is legal, at least it's legal in India. Merits, legal and compulsory. Merits and demerits. Let's look at the merits first. Enhanced flexibility. Comparative analysis of industrial relation systems allows MNCs to adapt HR policies and practices to local contexts while maintaining global consistency. Now, if you are talking about global consistency, basically you are meeting the global requirement of the company. Effective conflict resolution, understanding cultural and institutional differences enables MNCs to manage labor disputes, conflicts more effectively, minimizing disruptions to business operations. So, merits is effective conflict resolution. Then let's look at improved employee engagement. By engaging in a dialogue and negotiation with employees and labor unions, MNCs can foster a culture of trust, cooperation, and mutual respect. So basically, when the company is taking the employee in, they do negotiate the salary. Strategic talent management, tailoring HR strategies to local labor market conditions enables MNCs to attract and retain top talent, enhancing organizational performance and competitiveness. If the legal system of the company is very sound, the market brand is that the company is really, really fantastic. And yes, I would love to get affiliated with this company. Brand of a company speaks for itself. All right, that is something, they do advertisement, they do a lot of things, press releases, etc., for popularity, etc. But nobody is a fool in the market. All right. So if their practices are the best practices, they will draw excellent talent across the globe. All right. And they will be able to retain them too. Let's talk about demerits now. Complexity and compliance burden. Managing industrial relations in multiple countries requires significant resources, expertise, attention to ensure compliance with diverse legal and regulatory requirements. So imagine the kind of resources the company has to have in place to operate in different countries, to have a whole lot of, you know, expertise in dealing with these challenges. Cultural and institutional challenges. Differences in cultural values, labor market institutions, legal frameworks can create challenges in implementing global HR policies and practices. Yes, if you're setting up base in Japan and then in China, then US, then you're setting in Norway, you're setting in a whole lot of places, you do have to go out and do your research, have the documentation in place. Documentations can take n number of years, So everything takes time depending on the way the company function, the country functions. All right. So you have to perforce adhere to the country's requirement. All right. And make sure that you are within the legal framework before you come up with your HR policies and practices. Risk of disputes and conflicts, cross-cultural misunderstandings and disagreements may arise during collective bargaining and negotiation processes, leading to labor disputes and industrial action. You do have a lot of risk involved here. All right, a lot of labor disputes can come up. Inconsistent implementation, variations in HR practices across different countries may lead to inconsistencies in employee treatment and perceptions of fairness, potentially undermining morale and engagement. So this is a huge challenge which the company can face or is facing. That is, you have HR policies all the time. We are talking about formulating policies, HR policies, etc., according to the region, according to the country that you're functioning in. But the same thing can be a huge problem if the people of this country working for the same company, all right, may take up the issue that yes, we are not getting this, they are getting it. So you give us something else in lieu of that. All right. Otherwise, they should not get that. Okay, small thing, but yes, it can be very bothersome. Case study. Union organizing. Union organizing underlies the concept of industrial relations. Two scenarios are possible for union organizing to occur. Employees can seek the assistance of a labor union to represent their interests, or a union organizer can initiate contact with workers to begin an organizing drive. In either scenario, the union organizer obtains signed authorization cards from workers who want a union to represent them. So there are two scenarios here. Either I go to the trade union people and ask them to represent me, or the trade union goes to the laborers and tells them that, okay, if you have a problem, we will represent you, and gets them to sign it so that they have authorization from the employee to represent them. When an organizer has interest from at least 30% of the employer's workers, he can file a petition with the labor board. The labor board deems whether of the union. The labor board certifies the union to represent the bargaining unit. That means he has been legal, he has got legal authority to represent. Collective bargaining. The collective bargaining process exemplifies how labor unions and management come together on mutually agreeable terms and conditions. Collective bargaining refers to a negotiation process whereby negotiating teams for the labor union and the employer exchange proposals, counteroffers, concessions to achieve a union contract. So they are basically offering each other a lot of counteroffers and concessions. Good faith means, just give me a minute, please. I think we've gone offline. Alvin, sir? Um, can you see?
Yes, madam. PPT visible.
I seem to be having some technical issue. Just give me a minute. So
So you got disconnected or what? But I can see you here. I've given you this thing, no? Check now. Yeah.
give me a minute, please. Are you able to see the slide?
Yes, madam. We are.
Okay. All right. We were discussing collective bargaining, proceeding with the next one, that is good faith. Good faith means they are sincere about reaching an agreement that mostly satisfies the interests of employees, the labor union, and the employer. Union contracts aren't simple. Many times, agreeing on a contract takes weeks and even months. Even after the labor union and employer agree on a tentative agreement, the contract still must be ratified or approved by the union members to be official. So basically, you do have certain contracts which are not very simple, and it can take a lot of time, and it has to be legalized or authorized, and you have to take signatures from all the key members. Strike action. Strike action is a powerful weapon with a prominent place in both the history and the future of industrial relations. For example, union workers dissatisfied with economic conditions during the contract negotiation process can strike, leaving the employer to find replacement workers so the company can meet business needs. However, those strikers risk losing their jobs because an employer can replace union members who go on strike for economic reasons. All right. So if the people who are going to go on strike, if the employees who are going to go on a strike due to economic reasons, then they stand to lose their jobs. They cannot be fired, but the replacement workers can become permanent employees, leaving the striking workers to waive the conditions of their reinstatement, such as wage increase, when the company has job openings. On the other hand, if a union worker goes on strike for non economic reasons, such as protesting an employer's practice of writing up union workers more frequently than non union workers, the law prohibits replacing those workers on strike. So, which means that the contract with the workers is very clear. It is a legal paper. There are certain conditions, rules, regulations laid out in writing in the contract, which will be followed by the company and vice versa. Labor management relationships don't always go smoothly. Even when the parties mutually agree to sit across a bargaining table from each other to negotiate a union contract, the labor laws contain provisions to protect the interests of union members who engage in lawful strikes, but strikes that violate the labor laws can result in union workers' termination. So it's as simple as that. You know, the labor management relationships can be very volatile at times. It's not at all peaceful. Let's look at the summary now. Industrial relations in a comparative perspective within international human resources are essential for MNCs seeking to navigate the complexities of global labor markets. By understanding and effectively managing labor relations across different countries, MNCs can promote legal compliance, mitigate risk, enhance employee relations, drive organizational performance. What is the main objective of industrial relations? Industrial relation is nothing but it is the relationship between employee, employer, and the government. All right. How it is going to ensure the smooth functioning, all the three key stakeholders have to work it out. The company being prominent in it. Why? Because the company is the one who's creating the jobs, and it has to give jobs, give wages, ensure that it's following all the labor laws, etc., and has to keep in communication with all the government legal requirements. Despite the challenges and complexities involved, the benefit of managing industrial relations in a comparative perspective outweigh the drawbacks. By adopting a strategic, proactive approach to labor relations, MNCs can leverage diversity, foster collaboration, and create value for employees, shareholders, and society as a whole. So basically, the MNC company has to really, really be very proactive. Being proactive is they do it on their own, ensure that they have continuous communication with all the legal bodies, and ensure that they are collaborating and cooperating so that their shareholders, the society, everybody is happy. The employees especially are very happy. Ultimately, effective management of industrial relations in a comparative perspective within IHR is essential for MNCs to achieve sustainable growth, competitive advantage, and long-term success in today's globalized economy. So the company really, really has to go out of its way to ensure that they are in the know-how of what is required right now. And yes, they have to be visionaries to ensure the continuity of the company. I've given you a link. Please do go through this. You will get some more information on industrial relations along with some case studies. Okay. Thank you. With that, we come to the end of module 10. So today I've finished module 9 and 10. Thank you. We'll stop now.